What is the shadow? You may come across this on your spiritual path in your growth and healing and development, and you've heard this being knocked around a lot. In this video, you're going to discover what the shadow is and how it's involved in your daily life, and how by recognizing, appreciating, and bringing it closer can radically transform your life. Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about the shadow. So the shadow for me is a massive part of my journey. For those of you who know, I've emerged out of 15 years of intense depression, and all of this time I was really battling with low self-worth, low self-esteem, not knowing my place in the world, being open to spirit. I was really open to spirituality and the idea that we are all connected, etc. But this didn't seem to shift me. And it's interesting, the first article that I wrote as I was emerging out of depression was an article called Embracing Your Dark Side. And this for me is such a massive part of my journey, because traditionally throughout my life, I was rejecting my dark side. I was rejecting this part of me. And there are a few ways that we can do this depending on, well, there's many ways, depending on the lineage that we come through in our life. So I'm going to talk about a few of them here, and you can see whether they resonate with you. And once you start to become aware of something, you bring the light of your consciousness into that arena. And this is how we start to shift. Awareness shifts so much of the themes that we move through just by being aware of them. So let's look at the shadow. Think of yourself standing in the sunlight. Okay, in the sunlight, the sun is blazing across your face, across your chest, across your body, and behind you, you've got your shadow. You look around, you've got the shadow. The shadow follows you everywhere. Everywhere you go, it's there. And the shadow is essentially, we can look at it on the most basic element, this. It's the part that we are not looking at. It's literally behind us. It is the part that is in the dark. And usually the shadow refers to a lot of our darker emotions or darker experiences. Okay. And this relates to anger, to jealousy, to envy, our insecurities, our doubts. Now, whilst we're aware of some of these, a lot of them remain unconscious. And this is what essentially dictates our daily life. The decisions that you make, they come from your conscious fears and your unconscious fears, as well as your conscious positive thoughts and feelings and belief systems, as well as your unconscious positive thoughts, belief systems. So essentially what's happening as you, especially during your childhood, adolescence, your upbringing, your environmental factors, they provide conditionings. And these conditionings are belief systems of how to live in the world, your reactions to situations, which then create more belief systems of how to live in the world. And essentially, because our society is generally negative orientated, fear-based, essentially, we create more fear-based belief systems. And so we create more fear-based survival mechanisms of how to deal with the world. In other words, this bad experience happened to me, I would never go near that kind of experience again. This is an extreme case, but it happens quite a lot. Think of trauma in your relationships. We create these absolute rules which say all people are like this, all men are like this, all women are like this. This may happen to me, so I'm going to go in defensive mode. And yet the shadow is coming up in all kinds of ways. Every single interaction that we have with another being will bring up our personality. As discussed in other videos, your life is an open book, so everything is a reflection of what's happening around you, both consciously and unconsciously. When we project onto another, we're usually projecting from our shadow, because when we project, we're doing it unconsciously. And so when you meet another person who brings up a reflective awareness on an unconscious level of a previous wound, it's going to bring up something for you. So let me give you an example here. Let's say you go to work, right? Or you're in work right now, and you're in an environment where you have a boss, male or female, and they're quite dominant. Now, as you go into that environment, you don't know this person. You've never met them before. Let's say this is your first day, you're meeting them for the first time. This happens anywhere, even when you meet a new person, a new friend. They bring up something for us because we immediately look at this person and create an idea of who they are based on our previous experiences. But essentially, if we go a little bit deeper, it's based on your relationship to those experiences that says everything. If your relationship to those experiences are unhealed, in other words, you haven't brought awareness into the shadow aspects, then you'll project the wounds onto this person, even though they haven't done anything yet. Yeah, what happens, of course, as we project that, we also emanate that energy out into the universe to create even more of that. Essentially, what we're saying is, this is my story, and this is what I want to see in my reality. Even though we actually don't want that. Because those unconscious belief systems are heading out into reality. They get met and they get served because the universe is simply meeting our commands. So when it comes to the shadow, these other elements, such as our darker emotions, such as our pain, our struggle, if we haven't met with them, if we haven't brought them closer, they stay with us. And all emotions don't just simply disappear, they stay within. And the more they're repressed, the more they try to get heard in our outer reality. And so we can never run away from them. And that is the first instinct that we do if we're coming from a fear-based programming, which most of us on the planet are coming from. This isn't a bad thing in itself. It's just to recognize that, because once you recognize that, you can start to change things. So for me, because I was so repellent of my own dark side, I hated the fact that I hated myself, for example. I hated the fact that I had insecurities. As I kept trying to push it away. And when I got into spirituality, I was trying to be more and more positive. Yet this made me feel even worse because I was not healing my shadow. I was not healing the part of me that is me. I did not recognize that this part is also me. And this is the key factor when working with the shadow. The first thing is to recognize that the light and the dark are within you and they are equal. With dualistic thinking, it can be programmed to think that one is better than the other. Surely the light is better than the dark. So one of the best ways that I find of understanding this is simply looking at the sun and the moon. Or the day and the night, right? So when it's daytime, it's light. And at nighttime, we don't think of it as bad. It's simply nighttime, right? We have no real judgment of one is better than the other. Or at least, if we look at it from a real perspective, how could one be better than the other? It's simply day and night. And this is essentially what's happening within us. Within you is the light and the dark. And the dark is the aspects that just haven't got attention. So if you think of yourself as having 3 kids, okay, you've got 3 kids. One of them is really naughty and is always making noise, making nuisance, really troublesome, right? The other 2 are really good and proper. They're keeping to the standard of what these 2 kids should be like. And so the one who's really naughty, you lock away in a room. Would you ever do that? Even the thought of that's crazy, right? Lock them away in the room and don't let them out. Yet that's what we're doing with these darker emotions. These emotions which are unhealed in the shadow, they are essentially the parts of yourself that have been hurt over the years and carry pain that simply want to be heard. So they're knocking on the door. They're trying to get heard. And what we do is we push them away. This is when we're repressing the shadow. And we're always doing this. It's not like we've healed the shadow and we tick box it. We're always healing our shadow because there's so much in the shadow. There's so much within our shadow that are unacknowledged. And of course, the shadow isn't just negative in terms of the darker emotions, anger, jealousy. It's also our positive traits that we're unaware of. They're also in our shadow because it's anything that you're unaware of. So how do we start to heal the shadow? And for me, this is one of the most effective ways which I say to my clients, and I say it time and time again because it worked for me in a really powerful way. The first thing I would say is to share with another. To get therapy, to get coach, to get a mentor. Find a way that you have somebody who's holding space for you to bring that out of you. This, I would say, is the most ideal way of bringing a shadow out. If you're unable to do that and you find a lot of resistance to doing that for lots of reasons, you might say it's money. It's never really about money. It's to do with our resistance to doing it. And I should know firsthand because this is my issue. then at least find a way to release it, to channel it out. And I would say this is writing. So with writing, it's getting up in the morning and writing out all of your negative thoughts, beliefs, feelings about yourself, about others, about the world. Now here's the thing. For those who follow a spiritual path, usually will say, how can I do this? I'm going to create more of it. You're already creating it. It's already inside of you. What you're actually doing now is actually bringing it into the consciousness. You're actually accepting and owning the fact that you've got these feelings and thoughts. And this is an amazing thing, because once you bring it out, there's an alchemy that happens. Once the light of your consciousness meets it, it starts to transform you and you start to liberate. Now, it took me 8 months of doing this morning and night, plus affirmational work, to emerge from my depression. But for me, this was it. And yet you don't need to do it in that intensity. Yeah, I would really recommend you do it in the morning. I really recommend you do it in the evening if you want to start to meet your shadow and you start to meet these parts. And yes, you can do some positive affirmational work afterwards if it makes you feel better. But I would give some time. You need to move into the space where you start to acknowledge that your shadow is a beautiful thing, that it isn't the boogeyman that's trying to chase after you. Once you turn around and face it, you realize that we've just been running away from ourselves. I had a dream like this once. I had a dream where I was being chased by this kind of demonic being all around this house. I was running into these different rooms. I was trying to get away from it. And I finally got into this room down in the basement, and I felt like really scared, like this thing was coming after me. And something told me so gently, turn around and take off your armor. And because of the way I heard this voice and message, I turned around, this being was at the door, and I took off this armor. I felt like I had this shield, like in Roman times, I took it off, and this light shone from my body, and it shone onto this being, and that cloudiness that was over it started to dissolve, and I saw that it was me. And all I felt was immense love. Immense love. And that dream, as I woke up, I went into meditation for like 40 minutes. So this was in the middle of the night. But it always showed me that, spirit, the universe was showing me that we're only running away from ourselves. So how can you bring the shadow into your life? This video is just to bring awareness to this and give you some tools and techniques. I've got a lot more information about the shadow. I've got some articles, and it's endless. This is a fascinating thing, because the more and more you understand your shadow, the more that you understand what's happening to you in the world, the more that you understand what is directing you, because in your shadow are so many treasures. There's so much wisdom in your shadow. There's so much strength and compassion. The more and more we meet our shadow, the less reaction that we have in the world around us, as we start to realize the only reason we get triggered is because it's triggering something in our shadow. The only reason things are happening to us in our life is because there's something sitting in our shadow that is asking for the light to be shone upon it. So here's love to your shadow. Big hugs to that part within you that is seeking to be heard, seeking to be valued, seeking to feel that it's worthy. And the only person that can show that it's worthy is you. Blessings on your journey. Namaste.